Hello, I'm Kolkaila. I'm currently a mid-career pursuing Masters in Public Administration. I'm also a senior editor at the Social and Urban Policy at the Harvard Kennedy School Policy Review. Welcome, David. It's a privilege to have you here at the Harvard Kennedy School. Of course, David's reputation precedes him, but I would still like to highlight a few of your career highlights. David served as the 13th Executive Director for the United Nations Food Program from 2017 to 2023. Driving significant financial support and embracing global engagement against hunger under his leadership, the WFP received the 2020 Nobel Prize for its efforts to fight hunger and to foster peace in conflict areas. Prior to the WFP, Beasley served as the governor of South Carolina from 1995 to 1999, contributing to significant economic reform. David also worked on global peace and economic development in over 100 countries. So David, we're all inspired by your journey. Can you share a few insights on how did you transition from politics to food security?
You know, it was, in some ways it was natural. I wasn't pursuing that job, actually. That's a whole nother story in itself. But, you know, my goal in life is to love your neighbor. How do you help people? And so as governor, how do you build better systems to help people be self-sufficient, independent, better education, better communities, safer communities? And so after that, then I was involved with peace and behind-the-scenes peacemaking, because you want a more peaceful world. And then I get this call about what I consider taking a role at the United Nations, and I was like, I had no interest of a job. I'm doing peace work. But my heart was always helping the poor, helping the needy, and I ended up being talked into taking the role at the World Food Program, which, looking back, was probably my greatest joy in my life, you know, was helping the poorest of the poor around the world. There's nothing gives you more joy and peace than helping those who need help. And at the same time, trying to not just help them, but also help them become self-sufficient. That's a beautiful thing, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to reflect more on your role at the WFP. I think during your tenure, you witnessed a lot of the greatest challenges the humanity has witnessed, whether global wars, conflicts, different famines. So I was wondering, how did the World Food Program evolve under your leadership? We have a Nobel Prize taken for their efforts.
Yeah, a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
When I took the role, we were facing 4 famines, and President Trump had just been elected, and he was zeroing out international aid. So the needs were dramatically increasing, and the funding dramatically decreasing. So who would want that job? And that was one of the reasons that Democrat and Republican leaders in the House and the Senate said, you're the only one we know that can reverse that, you know, that thinking. And I said, I don't know about that, but anyway, I'll do what I can. So I ended up taking the role. So when I took the job, there were, in a population of the world, 7.6 billion. There were 80 million people in what we call IPC levels. IPC level 3, 4, 5. That's severe food insecurity. They don't know where the next meal is coming from. There would be close to famine, destabilization of an area, or mass migration. And so I was thinking 80 million out of 7.6 billion. Wow, I can put the World Food Program out of business. We can end that. I mean, that's how I saw it. Well, the number went from 80 to 135 million, and then from 135 to 275, then from 275 to 350. So we were going backwards because of man-made conflict, climate shocks, COVID, then Ukraine, the whole 9 yards, just catapulting problem after problem after problem. And so I had to think differently. How can you raise more money in an environment like that, particularly with COVID economic impact? And so I had to make the narrative different. You couldn't just go speak to the leaders in the normal UN language and the normal UN narrative. And so I created I don't want to say I created, because I tell you, I learn from others. Everything I do, I learn from others. What works, what doesn't work, what sounds more strategic. And so helping people understand that these aren't just numbers, helping leaders understand that that is not just a number, that's a little girl, and that's a little boy. And if you're not going to do it out of the goodness of your heart, help that child in another country, well, you better do it out of your national security interest and your financial interest, because it's going to cost you 1,000 times more. And then I'd give them anecdotal evidence of what I'm talking about versus just hypothetical talk. And you hit their heart, and they see that, and they respond. Now, that sounds a lot easier just in this little short conversation, but it took a lot of tweeting and Facebook and social media and traditional media and a lot of one-on-ones, going to the field, going to the Capitol. And I spent probably 2/3 of my time outside of my headquarters. And that's where also Zoom and all that helped, because I could have my leadership meetings wherever I was from around the world. But I could go sit, go to a damaging war zone, leave there and go straight to a capital like Berlin or Paris or London or the U.S. or wherever, and then be so fresh in your mind. And they feel it when you come and you're speaking with compassion, and they see, I just saw these children dying, because I was just there the day before. And it moves the leaders, because they all want to do good, but sometimes they need a little help.
Yeah. I was wondering when you're talking about climate change, so there is a complex interplay between climate change, economy, geopolitical tensions.
Yeah.
So from your experiences, how can we enable governments, private sector, and international organizations to work together to solve the challenges of climate change? Where is the gap? What are the challenges?
And I could talk about this all day long, in the different sectors, from public, private sector, and the humanitarian sphere. One of the things I've really been pretty hard with, particularly the developed nations. You talk about mitigation. Well, I've got countries that aren't going to survive if they don't have adaptation in the meantime. They got to survive, because the climate shocks are taking place. And so I might say to the most, I'd say, conservative who doesn't believe in climate change, and I'm like, look, I'll let you debate what's causing it, but let me just show you firsthand what's happening in this country, in this country, in this country. I said, it's changing out there, and we have solutions so that these people can, number one, survive, number two, not migrate, or not be destabilized by extremist groups like ISIS or Al-Qaeda that exploit these types of destabilized or fragile environments. So like take the Sahel. And I did this like on France 24 television. I said, because I was trying to stir it up, because how do you get people to focus on these problems when they're focused on Ukraine, or they're focused on this, and they don't realize there's a bigger problem, but the media is not focused on it. So I remember saying, you think Syria was a problem? We had 1 million refugees coming into Germany out of Syria because you didn't address the root cause in time, and it cost you this amount of money? I said, what's happening in the Sahel right now with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and food insecurity? It's going to make the Syrian crisis look like a Sunday afternoon picnic. And the news reporter said, Mr. Beasley, are you trying to scare the European people? And I said, yeah, hell yeah, I'm trying to scare you. I'm trying to wake you up to the reality. And the good news is we have solutions. Food is the most powerful weapon of stabilization and peace there is. I don't care your religion. I don't care the color of your skin. I don't care your sex. Food is a powerful stabilizing. We use it, which is why we received the Nobel Peace Prize. We use food as a weapon of peace, while others try to weaponize it for war, conflict, division, or ISIS to recruit by denying and cutting off supply chains, these kind of things. Anyway.
Yeah, I think this is key, because adaptation doesn't receive as much attention. Even in climate finance, it's even less than 5%. So
well, and when you look at the climate, and I would have friends who would say, yeah, but that country, the waterfall hasn't changed. I said, no, it has changed. It might not have changed for that year, but it changed in that part of the season. It's drier, and in that part of the season, there's more flash floods. I said, it is changing. And I said, if you're not there and see this, you won't realize how it's impacting the planting or the harvesting or the food security with these families. It's not like they can jump in a car and drive from Boston to New York, because most people don't realize how fragile these places really, really are. And then when you look to the future, the number of displaced people in the last few years from climate is, I think, around 30 million right now, give or take. And it's going up, up, up. And the numbers that we're looking at by 2050 and by 2100. And so I'm trying to wake up the leadership to realize, look, you need to look at this iceberg out in front of the Titanic and quit rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. And this displacement from climate, we've got short-term solutions of adaptation while we also address mitigation. And most of the money is going toward mitigation to the wealthy countries and not to the poorest of the poor countries that don't have the money to stabilize their countries. And I'm trying to get the leaders to recognize that's going to cost you 1,000 times more, because when they become refugees into your country and they don't want to be there, and it's going to cost you, for example, we can feed a Syrian in Syria for 50 cents a day. That same Syrian ends up in Germany, it's 70 euros a day. And that's not all of it. Do the math. 50 to 70. So 140 times the cost. So they spent $125 billion in Germany alone on 5 years for 1 million refugees. $125 billion. And those people did not want to be in Germany. Not that they didn't like Germany, they want to be home. So divide 125 million by 140. It's less than $1 billion if we'd have fed them, kept them with programs at home. That's just one example. We can go to Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador. I can go all over the place. Well, maybe not El Salvador right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, you get the point.
I definitely agree on that. And I do believe that with droughts, there will be a lot of displacement. And even like the recent statistics by the UN, they expect like 3/4 of the world population to experience drought sometime in the year.
Yeah.
These are stunning.
So how can we come in there?
Yes.
And we've got the programs that work. I know, I've seen it firsthand. You know, not even getting to the issue of better seeds and different types of fertilizers that are better for the environment and also more heat resilient, these types of things, versus just rehabilitating the land to capture the limited water that there is. And if you go, and this is what I would do with leaders, because if you go and meet with a president or a prime minister and you got a 30-minute video, I can watch it. Doesn't have time. But I can show them a 1.5-minute video before, after, and they'll look at that like, whoa. And guess who did the work? The beneficiaries. If you want to learn the entrepreneurial spirit, you don't have to go to Harvard Business School. Go give an African woman the same tools you give others. Holy mackerel. They're amazing what they do. It's really a beautiful thing. I've seen it firsthand. We need to scale it up.
Yeah, I would build on that. I was like, when you say, like, give the African women the tools, and I talk about how the WFP became, like, the biggest aid biggest aid organization that gives cash transfers. Yeah. So I know that in 2022 you had 3.3 billion. That's almost 35% of the statistics of the food assistance of the World Food Program that has been distributed to almost 50 million across 72 countries, and that was in cash transfers. So I would love to learn from you. What are the key learnings from this program? How can we increase its potential adoption in different organizations?
Yeah, when I left, we were the world's largest humanitarian organization by far. And interesting, because when I joined the organization, I was not supportive of cash-based transfers. I thought it was too dangerous, getting in the wrong hands. We didn't want to fund ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and they buy a plane ticket and go bomb somewhere. You know, I was like, no. And I had several friends from around the world, and a couple of senators that were pushing it. And I'm like, not until I have the confidence that you have the protocols and systems in place to assure that it gets to the right beneficiary. And anyway, it took me about a year, and then I started like, oh, wow, this perfect here. Well, we went from maybe a couple $100 million in cash-based transfer. By the time I left, $3 billion. Yeah. And the power of putting cash liquidity into a marketplace and stimulating supply chain systems, because that's what's critical in so many of these places. Their supply chain system is broken down. And so you've got to, if you want to create self-sufficiency, you've got to get the supply chain system going. So we used cash-based transfers in multiple ways in creating supply chain systems and empowering women. And that's a whole study and story in itself. Incredible, the success, particularly in places where women were truly second-class citizens. They had
Yeah.
no equality at all. And we used cash-based transfers, the power of money, to strengthen the ability to bring the type of change necessary in communities all over the world. And the studies prove we're right. And I mean, domestic abuse would go down. It might go up for a few weeks, but it would go down. And it was really quite incredible. One of the things that I did that has never been public, which I was shocked when I joined the United Nations, this fact that the World Food Program, 34% of all the employees around the world were women. That's the United Nations. Well, I know we're in Yemen and Afghanistan, but 34%. I took it to 42%. Now, internationals, it was about 50, but I took it over 4,000, almost 4,500 additional women that I brought in. Now, why is that important? Because now I've got 4,500, give or take, more women at all levels. And 5 years later, you've got 4,500 more women with 5 years of experience to apply for the next level jobs. And having those women in the discussions on what works and what doesn't work in all these different environments increase our ability to make better decisions. And I think it was why it helped increase our effectiveness of the whole organization by empowering everyone, including women, equally. And so, anyway.
Yeah, but that's very inspiring. I do believe in women empowerment and its role in like driving aid and delivery in humanitarian crisis areas, particularly.
And what we did with women on that, we had programs just for women, rehabilitation of land and geography, and how we use the influence of women in empowerment. Remarkable. I'm not talking about hundreds of thousands. I'm talking about millions.
Wow.
Millions. I hear people talk about a women's program. Well, how many? Well, that's great. There's 150. Well, we were 160 million people we were reaching, of which half of them were female. And then of those, it's one thing just to give food. It's another thing to give them empowerment.
That's
in
true.
Different types of programs that we had.
So while you're speaking of like implementation, and particularly in conflict-related areas or war zones, and looking at how technology adoption is increasing and it's becoming so fast, it was like, I'd be interested to think of like, how do you envision the future with technology? Will it facilitate the delivery of aid? How do you see it happening? Tell me your vision.
You know, it hasn't been developed yet, but you can't eat that thing. You just can't eat a cell phone. It's not that smart, right? But how do you use modern technology? And we use blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, satellite imagery, and that's changing and developing literally by the hour, right? And so we have some of the best of the best, and we network with some of the biggest global cyber companies, internet companies, yes, of course, Microsoft, I could go on and on, bringing their best and brightest to our operation and say, how can you help us be more strategic? From supply chains, by being able to buy more for less, to reach more, all these different things. How do we analyze out data on satellite imagery in terms of looking at future dynamics of climate shifting, looking at flash flooding, and all these issues. And using facial recognition, eye recognition, retina, fingerprinting, integrating that type of data so that the donors know that their dollar, their food and or their dollar is reaching the intended recipients. That is massive savings. Gosh, I could go on and on about that, but technology has really allowed us to reach more people, be more strategic, more effective, while at the same time, that same cell phone is being used to create division and war and conflict with misinformation and disinformation. So it's like a knife.
Yeah.
It can do good, it can do bad. I'm more worried about the bad right now than I am the good.
Tell me more about that.
Well, I have said to leaders around the world in private, G7 leaders, G20, that this device with social media, with all the misinformation, disinformation, I think very well could bring an end to democracy as we know it. Now, I think your generation, this is why I'm here speaking at campuses now to inspire the young people to focus on things that really are going to change the world. And how do you control this thing where it becomes a force for good and not a force for evil by bad people who just want to, create all this disinformation because you're a victim of the information you receive, right? And that's a tough one. It really, really is. It used to be like in the United States, you had the big three, NBC, CBS, ABC. Well, they might have leaned left, but generally it was fair and good reporting. But now you're getting hit from who knows what, all different ways. And so much of it is wrong, it's lies. So it's a complex one. I'm not smart enough to figure that one out, but I'm smart enough to recognize people who can figure it out. We got to get them there. And I think your generation are the ones that kind of really help us get there.
Well, we hope so. But speaking of that, we know that effective aid requires visionary leaders with diplomacy to bridge the gaps between nations, organizations, and communities and foster collaboration, like you have spoken about, in conflict-related areas. Well, in light of your visit here at the Harvard Kennedy School, what advice do you have for us as we grow and we want to join the humanitarian sector?
I think what you learn in academics is extremely important, but why? What is it you're trying to learn? What's your goal? What's your purpose in life? What is it? What's the basis of what you believe in? And me personally, I challenge professors and students. Like, my purpose is to love my neighbor as myself. How do I help the poor, the needy, the least of these? So therefore, how can I take better academics and make better institutions and build better relationships? And because I've learned, when you think 200 years ago, when the world population was 1.1 billion, 95% of the people on the planet were in extreme poverty. Think about that. Whoa. I mean, the whole world. Today, 8 billion people, and less than 10% are in extreme poverty. So we have built systems, better organizations, better institutions, that's sharing more wealth than any time period in world history. But try telling that to the 10% we haven't reached yet. So do we tear down the systems that's reaching the 90 to reach the 10? No. But some of those programs still need working on, and we need to work with all of our heart, mind, and soul to reach that 10%. Because they aren't experiencing, and all they see is a few billionaires making so much money, and it seems like they don't really care, which got to my tweet that I did with Elon Musk, Bezos and all those guys, which was really, to me, a lot of fun, but I'm in it. You got $430 trillion of wealth on the planet today. And every 5 seconds, a child's dying from starvation. Shame on us. So, here at the Kennedy School, what's your goal and objective? Is it just power and politics? I don't want to have anything to do with you. But if to help make a better society, safer, let's go work together. I don't care if you're from the left or from the right. Our goals are the same. We might have differences of opinion. And this is one thing I would encourage and admonish the young people on campus. Everybody that has a different view from you is not your enemy. My best friends, when I was in the House of Representatives, were usually my biggest enemies on the floor of the House. But I had such respect for them, and they respect for me. We would fight it out, but then we'd go have dinner together. So learn how to listen to others, earn the right to be heard, versus just shouting. Now, you got nuts. Ignore the nuts. They're loud and they're nuts. But generally, most people they care. And just because you come from this angle and I come from that angle, go break bread with somebody of a different persuasion than you. Don't talk the issues. Just get to know each other. And you'll be shocked at what happens. You'll be shocked. At the World Food Program, we use food to reconcile people, to bring people together. And it's a powerful tool. In the history of the world, food has always been in the middle of peace.
Sure.
And when you don't have food security, you usually got war and conflict.
That's absolutely true. Well, thank you for all the inspiration you provided. Your journey and achievements have been truly a beacon of hope for all of us. As we close this session, let's carry forward the light of inspiration you have put in us. Thank you, David.
Well, thank you. I am so excited about the future because of women and men like you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such an honor to meet you and to be here at Kennedy School.
No, thank you.
Okay.